discovered the incredible moment when she helped a billionaire's forgotten father deliver an ins. Amber Turner stood at the edge of Henry's cramped apartment, her heart racing with uncertainty. The dull hum of the hospital faded into a distant echo, replaced by the stifling air thick with sadness. She had entered the world of an elderly man, once vibrant, but now reduced to mere memories of a past filled with promise. A part of her trembled, wondering if tonight would mark the turning point that could redefine her as a nurse or ensnare her in a web of family secrets better left untouched. Balancing nursing school demands, relentless schedules, and the pressure to excel weighed down on her like a heavy blanket. But here with Henry, in this dimly lit room, she felt a different struggle, one rooted in the understanding of human worth versus achievement. The irony clawed at her mind, as she studied tirelessly to lift herself into a future she feared would come with a price. Henry's story spoke of a son who ascended the heights of success yet abandoned his roots. Do they even remember what it was like to be real? She thought, questioning her own ambition and the cost it could entail. In this moment, she recognized her first moral dilemma: should she confront the omnipresent shadow of the billionaire? The thought twisted in her stomach. The ambition that fueled her studies was the same ambition that had severed family ties. Would her desire for a successful career eclipse the voices of those left behind like Henry? The tension crackled in the air, a reminder of the connections that matter most. She shivered, haunted by the question, was there room in this world for compassion in the face of towering ambition? Amber's mind spun with thoughts and fears that quickened her unease inwardly. Memories of her grueling studies, late-night cramming sessions, and lonely moments amidst overcrowded lecture halls flooded her consciousness. Would her dedication shatter beneath the weight of ethics? Every moment she spent with Henry deepened her understanding, yet solidified her internal conflict. Each conversation unveiled layers of bitterness that Henry clung to, a haunting reminder of a son's neglect worsened by his wealth. The closer they grew, the more her heart ached for what could be safety within the warmth of family connections, healing within the bond of understanding. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she stood in that cramped living space, the knock on the door jolted Amber from her spiraling thoughts. The sound seemed to reverberate through her. Panic bubbled up in her chest. Was it the billionaire, seeking his father? Her breath caught as fear constricted her chest. This moment held infinite possibilities, a confrontation between two worlds, one filled with golden opportunities and the other, a facade unraveling under regret. She turned to face Henry, his frail body tense as he shifted painfully in his chair. There it was, the moment of truth. She could either safeguard the vulnerable man's dignity or watch as his past invades. Should she step forward into the storm, risking everything for the sake of compassion for a man long forgotten? The tension peaked within her, leaving her aching with indecision in this critical sphere where humanity collided with ambition. The answer lingered just out of reach, and as the door creaked open, time froze. Would she unlock the healing power of family ties or succumb to the suffocating might of detachment? The conclusion hung like a whisper in the air, heavy and unresolved. Shadows of hope loomed as Amber readied herself for a decision that could irrevocably change everything. Amber's heart thundered, the door slowly creaking open as shadows loomed larger than life. She steadied herself, squaring her shoulders as if preparing for battle against an unseen adversary, the very embodiment of her personal conflict. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the dim hallway light, his features obscured but the aura unmistakably wealthy. The tension was palpable, she could almost taste the mixture of impending confrontation and dread on her tongue. Henry, the figure spoke softly, yet there was a steeliness hidden within that infused the name with a weighty ache. It's been a while. Amber's pulse quickened further, urging her to act, but her limbs felt frozen in place. The sight of a son confronting his father irrevocably shifted focus. This was not merely a billionaire seeking reconciliation, this was a family fracture laid bare, a narrative that threatened to engulf her in its web of sorrow and regret. "Do you belong in this world, Amber?" She pondered, wrestling with her own desires. "What right do you have to interfere?" This thought hovered heavily in her mind, grasping at her doubts and self-worth. Should she stand firm, defending Henry's secrets, or encourage reconciliation, risking her own values in the process? Both men stared at one another, the space between them charged with unresolved emotions. Henry narrowed his eyes, trembling with fury and fear, his raised voice quavering. "You left me, David. All those years, you chose your empire over your family." The bitterness was raw and unfiltered, echoing through the cramped quarters. It struck Amber directly in the heart, and she felt a wrenching twinge of empathy for the old man. Yet, she felt a flicker of unrest within. Turning away from the exploitation of emotions while still standing at the precipice of her ethics paralleled her aspirations. Did she possess the courage to navigate this emotional battlefield without losing herself in the storm of ambition? It became more evident that every choice she made would ripple beyond this confined space. Amber glanced between the two, straddling both sides of the divide. She could access the realm of familial bonds Henry cherished yet tread closer to the sleek, distant allure of ambition represented by David. Rapidly she spun scenarios in her head, the life she could forge through her career against the pain of watching Henry suffer alone. Perhaps her career meant sacrificing her humanity. The thought pierced her with shame. Just as she began to reconcile the issues within her, David's pained expression faltered into something softer, sincere, almost searching. "I've come to make amends," he said, voice tinged with vulnerability. "But I need you to listen, to understand." A glimmer of hope sparked within Amber. Here was an opportunity to pivot from despair toward healing, but questions drummed relentlessly in her mind. Should she facilitate this reunion, risking further pain for Henry? In a moment, everything shifted. Her journey was no longer merely about nursing, it had morphed into a delicate dance of ethics and emotions. Amber searched for strength from within, but the labyrinth of choices felt suffocating. She had to think fast. Was she merely a bystander, or could she become a catalyst for change? "Maybe you should listen to him, Henry," she finally whispered, her voice stronger than her trembling hands. "There's a chance to mend what was broken." As she spoke, she became acutely aware that through this decision, she stepped closer to the intersection of caring and ambition, where paths could clash, or new beginnings could bloom. But confounding doubt churned inside her. What if she misjudged the situation and it all backfired? The air thickened with uncertainty, yet Amber knew she had to unravel this tangled knot beside them. Each heartbeat echoed her resolve to confront the roots of this dysfunction and, in doing so, uncover her own. Determined, she held her breath, readying herself for the answer, for the next step in this intricate tapestry of human connection. The stakes had never felt higher. What revelations lay ahead? The echoes of the past begged to be addressed, just as a new chapter in her own life threatened to unfold. Amber's gaze shifted from Henry to David, a tempest of emotions swirling within her. With the stakes rising, the air crackled as if charged with electricity. She could almost hear the unspoken words that lingered like a haunting melody, echoing not just in the room but deep inside her. Could she truly act as a bridge between two colossal figures tangled in their own histories? With every heartbeat, Amber battled a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins. This moment wasn't just about them, it was about her emerging potential, her fortitude clashing against the fear of being consumed by their tempest. "Henry," David began again, his voice now steadier, "I know I failed you. I was entirely consumed by my ambition, and I let you slip away." There was a depth to his words, layered with regret and vulnerability. Amber felt an undeniable pull toward this raw exposure, not just from David but the repressed emotions from Henry. But what to do with this moment? Would siding with David risk shattering Henry even further, or could it pave a path to healing? Each beat felt like a wager, a push against her own limitations. Your empire? Henry shot back, anger crackling in the air. What joy does it hold without family? Amber sensed Henry's protective instinct kicking in. It was more than just grief, it was survival manifested in anger. The familial ties Henry once held dear now morphed into chains nearly crushing him under their weight. With her heart congealing into a steely resolve, Amber unfolded her hands and stepped slightly forward, willing the space to resonate with a tone of compassion. What if, she interjected, this is the moment for both of you? A chance to transform despair into understanding? The silence hung heavy, laden with anticipation. David's gaze flickered toward Amber, a flicker of hope igniting momentarily. If only you could believe in what lies ahead, Henry, he murmured. The foundation I built shattered in my pursuit of power. But I can't reconstruct the past, I can only protect what might still stand. Amber didn't realize she was holding her breath, waiting for Henry's response. She felt the weight of both men's histories pressing into her chest, forcing her to parse through her own growing instincts. Would she contribute to a crisis, or could she, through this unprecedented intercession, insinuate hope into despair? Don't say that. Don't suggest you can't change. Amber felt her confidence burgeon, buoyed by the contrast of their sorrow. You might have lost a part of you, David, but your journey can still catalyze something greater. She met Henry's unreadable expression, feeling the depths of their shared history. He was wrestling shadows, yet there flickered a nascent glimmer of understanding. Could he learn to untangle love from resentment? I don't know how, he uttered, voice quavering with uncharacteristic fragility. The admission felt monumental, detonating pent-up emotions. Amber seized the moment, her resolve threading into a reassuring calm. This was unlike any patient's emotional assessment, it was a profound interaction demanding authenticity. You don't have to know how, just be willing to start. We can break this cycle. It echoed through the cramped space where once silence prevailed. She realized she commanded tools she never knew she possessed: this fortitude, this confidence to influence monumental changes in others, all emerging from the shadows of her own doubts. Still, a lingering question taunted her: how dramatic could this unraveling become? What would happen if David reached out and Henry recoiled? An unmistakable dread threatened to suffocate her burgeoning sense of purpose. As if in response to her internal turmoil, Henry's sharp inhalation broke the moment. Maybe, he began hesitantly, eyes darting between Amber and David. If I could just hear you out. Amber's heart blossomed with cautious optimism. A delicate shift had occurred, one she could have never orchestrated had she remained a bystander. Yet a shadow still nestled within her, whispering of risks uncalculated. What if this leads to more pain? She thought, uncertainty churning in her stomach. As Henry's voice began to resonate with tentative acceptance, reflecting the inside of their complex family dynamic, she recognized her lingering doubts weren't just barriers, they were intrinsic to her personal evolution as well. The air thick with anticipation, a threshold had been crossed in that cramped space. Suddenly, the past echoed more insistently than before, overshadowed by the bright potential of reconciliation looming on the horizon. For the first time, Amber noticed her own ambitions fading slightly against the transformative power of empathy, and she harbored no regrets. Would her decision yield a renaissance of relationships or deepen the rift they all feared? With emotions taut, she understood that their next words would shape not only the lives within that room but her own trajectory yet unheard. What awaited them on this precipice of renewal? The moment of truth pressed closer, threatening to reshape everything they believed about each other and themselves. Amber inhaled deeply, the weight of her decision pressing into her lungs. As the quiet tension wrapped around them, she felt every eye turn toward her, a primal energy arcing between them like an electric current. This moment was no longer just about David and Henry, it coiled tightly around her, enmeshing her in their familial strife. Maybe we should start with the past, Amber suggested, her voice steady despite the maelstrom of thoughts colliding in her mind. David, explain to Henry what you meant by empire and family. What does it mean to you? She looked at David with a tentative smile, a silent cue for him to lay bare his regret. David's eyes brightened, a combination of surprise and acknowledgement rippling across his features. It was never about the money, he started, drawing himself up. The tremor in his voice betrayed his effort to maintain composure. I was driven by this need to prove myself. To you, Henry. To everyone. Yet, in my pursuit, I lost the very thing that mattered most. Amber observed Henry's reaction, his furrowed brow signaling the flailing remnants of his long-held resentment. The anger simmering beneath the surface was palpable, a fire stoked by years of disappointment. Desperation crossed her mind. If she chose her words poorly, she could fan that fire into a raging inferno. Do you acknowledge how that ambition led to our isolation? Henry's voice was calm, but the undertone spoke volumes. He challenged David, and Amber sensed both the vulnerability of a wounded child and a man hardened by betrayal. I do, David admitted, a quiver running through his words. I thought I was building a legacy. I wanted you to be proud. Instead, I pushed you away. He took a shaky breath, averting his gaze. It was a candid moment, a window into someone shaped by ambition but shattered by the realization that he sidelined his true treasures. Maybe it is possible to rebuild, Amber ventured carefully, daring to step closer to the friction. This could be the first chapter of a new legacy, one that acknowledges past mistakes rather than hiding from them. As she spoke, Amber felt a sense of potency surging through her, as if each word carved a new path forward. She had stepped from the shadows into the light, revealing her ability to influence this pivotal moment. But doubt still lingered. Could they truly heal the wounds etched into their lives? Yes, a new legacy, Henry repeated slowly, the repetition seeming to ground him. Yet, he looked at Amber, his eyes a storm of uncertainty and longing. But how do I forgive you, David? You were supposed to be there when it mattered. I don't want your forgiveness if it comes at the cost of your heart. David's earnestness filled the air, thick with emotion. But I want you to know that I will do everything to earn it back. Amber's gaze darted between them. The gravity of the moment hung in the air like an exquisite tapestry of hope and pain, the frayed edges of which she feared could unravel at any minute. Within her, a question twisted with urgency. Here they stood at a crossroads. Could she guide them through, or was she merely stoking a fire meant to stay contained? What do you need in order to feel comfortable moving forward? Amber asked Henry, her tone structured yet compassionate, attempting to catalyze action rather than inaction. Henry pondered, vulnerability surfacing in the depths of his stormy eyes. I need honesty. A commitment to not just speak words but to act on them. Not just for me, but for our family. As his declaration sank in, Amber recognized the monumental weight accompanying such a request. It was not just a demand, it was an invitation to redefine not just their relationships but their very perceptions of self-worth and responsibility. Then let us start with that, she urged, hopeful yet acutely aware of the fragile nature of this path. Henry, can you accept David's attempt to make amends? Even if there's fear framing your response? Henry's brow knitted tighter, a complex dance of hesitance pooling at the corners of his mouth. The shields he had built to protect. His heart had begun to crack, exposing the hesitation beneath. Amber felt her own anticipation swell, a sense of urgency chasing her. This was the moment that mattered. Could they navigate through the chaos? The air around them pulsed with potential, but one thought froze her like a wild card tossed into the fray. What if Henry didn't respond the way they all hoped? And there it was, the looming question, prime for the answering. As this pivotal moment approached, Amber braced herself, grappling with the reality that real change often comes at a price. Could they truly transform their web of despair into a tapestry of reunion, or would this be yet another fleeting attempt at repair, encased in unresolved pain? In that charged silence, Amber felt the weight of every decision settle in. Would they choose to face their truths together or succumb to the familiar shadows of their fractured past? Amber held her breath, the tension hanging thick in the air like a heavy fog. The moment was precarious, teetering on the edge of revelation or breakdown. David's past loomed enormous above their heads while Henry's gaze flickered with skepticism. What if this fragile attempt to mend their ties only served to deepen the rift? Her heart raced as she silently prayed that Henry would find the courage to embrace vulnerability. "Do you really mean that, David?" Henry's voice broke the silence, raw and edged with disbelief. The question reverberated through the room, heavy with years of expectation and disappointment. It had the weight of their history carried on his shoulders. Amber watched Daniel, his expression morphing from fragile hope to guarded resolve. It became clear to her that their discourse hinged on honesty, and that honesty, even when cloaked in pain, would lead them down a path they had never dared to tread. "You need to prove it," Henry continued, his words flat but resolute. "Actions speak louder." She felt the familiar stir of frustration well up within her. How could she broker this complex negotiation of emotions? Each man before her was trapped in their own perspectives, blinded by unresolved trauma and yearning for understanding. If only she could shatter this impasse. "What if we came up with a plan?" she suggested impulsively, sensing the urgency pushing her forward. "What does that mean?" Henry narrowed his eyes suspiciously. He could smell the stakes wrapped around Amber's suggestion like a vine around a tree. "A plan to rebuild. Transparent objectives to grow together, to break through the barriers," she articulated, her pulse quickening. It shocked her how confident she felt voicing this bold idea. The notion that both of them could benefit from her insight ignited a spark she hadn't anticipated. She was becoming an active part of this equation, steering it toward transformation. "I like that." David's voice was quiet, filled with the cautious optimism of one who hasn't dared to hope in years. "What sort of objectives do you have in mind?" Amber paused, considering her next words carefully. This was the moment for a decisive action, exactly what she had been irrevocably drawn to. Forgiveness would be key, and communication. Set up regular family meetings to hash things out. Everyone needs to know what the others truly feel. Henry scoffed, crossing his arms. "Meetings? You think that will fix everything?" "No," she countered sharply, her own frustration flaring. "But it's a start. It's going beyond just saying you're sorry. It's laying out a roadmap to understanding. Each person has to own their role in this family dynamic." Henry remained silent, but his shoulders shifted as he considered her words. She saw the conflict raging within him, battling the desire for connection against the fear of it being snatched away again. In that moment, Amber felt a surge of determination. The challenge appealed to her innate drive to empower others, especially when the stakes felt highest. David's brow furrowed as he spoke. "What does accountability look like for each of us?" "Your accountability will mean not just speaking but actively being present in Henry's life and accepting the consequences of your absence." She felt the confidence in her words swell as they poured from her mouth. "For Henry, it'll be trusting that when you say you're committed, you will show up." Silence enveloped them once more, a thick blanket inadequately concealing the whirlpool of emotions beneath. She was pushing them to acknowledge not only their collective failures but their individual identities. Could they all emerge transformed? "Can you do that, Henry?" Amber pressed gently, her expression softening. "Can you trust again?" His gaze met hers, vulnerability flickering within. The air charged with raw uncertainty, shifting her own perception of the moment's gravity. The hardest battles often lay between one's own self-doubt and their desire to heal. Amber realized this was her moment of discovery, not just about their relationships but a clearer understanding of her capability to effect real change. I think," Henry stammered, his cheeks reddening, revealing emotions tangled with hesitation. "I want to try. I really do." Amber felt a rush of warmth, this tiny beacon of hope sending ripples through their fraught dynamic. She could see it clearly now. She would champion this family through their treacherous waters, using her own discovery of purpose as the boat to help them navigate each wave ahead. But as a new understanding began to weave its intricate patterns among them, she could still sense the storm brewing just out of view. What other hidden truths lay in wait, ready to shatter their newfound resolve? In that charged silence, Amber felt the arc of an unforeseen challenge shimmering ahead. The deeper they dug into their past, the greater the risk of uncovering buried secrets. Was she ready to face the revelations that threatened to unravel all they had just begun to piece together? Amber's heart raced as she observed the shifting dynamics around her. The fragile peace they had begun to forge felt like a tenuous thread pulled taut, ready to snap at the slightest strain. David's subdued hope contrasted sharply with Henry's guarded skepticism, and she was acutely aware that the moments ahead would either build a bridge of understanding or send them careening back to the isolation that had defined their relationship for so long. "Let us think through this," Amber urged, taking a calming breath. "Before we jump into meetings or plans, let us understand what each of us needs from this process. What does forgiveness or rebuild look like for each one of you?" David looked hesitant, almost overwhelmed. "I can say I'm sorry. But I don't know what else I can do to make things right." Amber leaned forward, her voice firm yet encouraging. "It's more than just a word, David. It's about demonstrating your commitment daily. It's finding ways to show up for Henry. What have you been missing in his life?" David's brow furrowed, deep in thought. It was evident he had been largely absent, but the acknowledgement of that fact was where their journey had to begin. Amber turned her attention to Henry. "And for you, it's about allowing David back into your life. What would that look like for you? You've been building walls for so long, how can we help you dismantle those barriers?" "I don't know," Henry admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if he hurts me again?" The doubt in Henry's voice cut through Amber with a sharpness that startled her. She realized that beneath his outward determination lurked a paralytic fear. "Trust is about risk, Henry. Isn't it worth it if it means building something real?" Tension hung in the air like an uninvited guest as Henry studied David, searching his face for signs of sincerity. Amber could feel her own insecurities rising. Was she truly capable of guiding them through this mess? "Let us try baby steps," she suggested, attempting to regain focus. "What if we started with small commitments? Things you're both comfortable with, like having dinner together once a week or even just texting to check in?" David nodded slowly, his expression shifting from uncertainty to determination. "Okay. I can commit to that. I can show up." "A text is a commitment?" Henry challenged, eyebrow raised. "Every journey starts with a single step, Henry," Amber reminded him, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's your choice to respond or not." With time, Henry's facade cracked more each moment spent tangled in this conversation. Amber could see the inner conflict churning within him. This was more than mere logistics, it struck at the core of human desire, the yearning for love, connection, and resolution. As Henry cracked a hesitant smile, Amber felt a rush of gratitude mixed with anxiety. It was a fragile moment, balanced precariously, teetering on the edge of something profound. But even as a small truce began to form, Amber couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that deeper issues lay hidden. The sheer complexity of their pasts loomed ominously, like a forgotten room filled with ghosts and whispers echoing from their histories. "Before we call it a night, let us set our first commitment. What do you both think?" Amber said, her voice intent. "Dinner sounds good," David stated, regaining some confidence. Henry paused, searching for his allocation of courage. "Sure. But that doesn't mean I trust you." "Trust takes time," Amber interjected gently. "But I believe that moving forward will only get easier if you both keep the lines of communication open." Henry's nod was reluctant, but it was a step. Amber could feel the wheels of progress begin to turn, humming with potential. Yet beneath this fragile hope lay an undercurrent of foreboding. What darker realities had they yet to uncover? Suddenly, the walls they'd built felt less like a refuge and more like a prison of their own making. Amber's thoughts spiraled. Her contributions would be tested not only against the impulse of hidden fears but also against the chance of greater revelations. What truths would the past reveal? And could the faith she was attempting to cultivate withstand the burden of what lay beneath the surface? With a shaky breath, Amber understood that their journey had only just begun. She felt both exhilarated and terrified. The weight of responsibility pressed down upon her, her mind racing with the realization that every conversation had the potential to unlock new paths. What lay waiting in the shadows of their histories? The answers beckoned, both enticing and frightening. Amber's mind buzzed as she drove home, replaying the conversation like an incessant loop. Each word exchanged between David and Henry felt charged, pulsing with emotion and the weight of unspoken truths. She felt a spark of hope flicker. Maybe they were turning a corner, but the more pressing thought nagged at her: could she really be the catalyst for this change? Pulling into her driveway, she didn't feel the satisfaction that should accompany a day's work well done. Instead, a sense of foreboding curled in her gut. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to find clarity in the chaos swirling around her thoughts. This was different from the therapy sessions she had led before. This was deeply personal, raw, real. As she entered her house, the stillness enveloped her like a shroud. She longed for interaction, for someone to share this burden with. The quiet felt oppressive. She grabbed her phone, scrolling absent-mindedly through social media, but the digital distractions offered no comfort. Each flicker of images brought her back to the struggle she was entangled in. She was their guide now, a lighthouse in turbulent waters, but what if she lost her way too? Amber dropped her bag by the door and made her way to the kitchen. While waiting for water to boil, she reflected on how much she had learned about David and Henry in just one session. She realized that each of their wounds had a complex, intertwined history that was deserving of understanding. The prospect of unearthing those histories left her feeling vulnerable. What if their pain was greater than she anticipated? Would she be able to handle the truths that could emerge? The kettle whistled sharply, snapping her back to reality. She poured herself a cup of tea, seeking solace in the warm embrace of the mug against her palms. Sipping, she reminded herself that patience was a virtue, a crucial element in the healing they all required. Her mind wandered to the next session. There would be a dinner, a meeting of sorts, fraught with potential and peril. What would they discuss? How could she ensure that the air wouldn't thicken with tension, choking off any chance for connection? This had to be a space where vulnerability could thrive, a risky endeavor. As she mulled over these thoughts, the walls of her personal ambitions began to graze her consciousness. Amber was no stranger to her own fears of inadequacy. Reflecting further, she accepted that her role was not only to facilitate their discussions but also to confront her own uncertainties about intimacy and human connection. She took a deep breath. This might be the opportunity she needed, not just for David and Henry, but for herself as well. What could she learn about the intricacies of her own relationships? The potential for growth from all sides inexplicably tied her own journey to theirs. In seeking resolution for them, she would inadvertently dig into her own buried complexities. As she mused, her phone vibrated against the countertop, shattering her reverie. A message from David read, "Thinking about tomorrow. I want to tell Henry that I'll try harder." That moment shifted something inside her. Perhaps David's statement was just the beginning. It felt like a crack in the facade he had built, letting light filter through. There was room for transformation, but it wouldn't come easy. With renewed determination, Amber typed back a quick reply encouraging him and emphasizing the importance of honesty. She felt the unyielding need for her own sense of worthiness bubble up. If she was to lead them, she must show them the courage to be vulnerable. Just then, a shiver of doubt crept in. The walls they had built might very well be intended for her as well. Would she be able to confront her own hidden fears? What would unravel at the dinner table? A slew of unprocessed memories, perhaps? Her heart raced at the prospects in both excitement and fear. Curiosity thrummed in her veins, urging her towards tomorrow. Would opening old wounds hasten their healing? Or would it unearth chasms so deep that it would tear them apart as they sought to rebuild? As night cloaked the sky in a comforting darkness, the anticipation for the upcoming dinner pulsed within her, leaving an unshakable question simmering at the forefront of her mind: what truths would they unearth with every shared meal? The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Amber's living room as she stared at her reflection in the window. The quiet of her home felt stark against the cacophony of thoughts racing through her mind. Tomorrow wasn't just another day, it was a pivotal moment in her journey with David and Henry. Could she wield her newfound understanding with precision, or would their collective vulnerabilities prove too much to bear? Amber flicked on the lights, illuminating the space with a soft glow. The familiarity of her surroundings should have offered comfort, yet the walls felt suffocating. She paced, trying to channel her anxiety into something actionable. Every step echoed her uncertainty. What were the right words to say? How could she pave a path to healing without stumbling into a minefield of emotional chaos? Distraction tugged at her, urging her to open her laptop and dive into her research for tomorrow's dinner. She opened a blank document, staring at the blinking cursor as though it held the answers she sought. How does one facilitate a dinner meant for reckoning? The room was filled with invisible stakes. She could feel the weight pressing down on her. Amber grabbed a notepad instead, jotting down points. Focus on their strengths. Remind them of their shared experiences. Provide a safe space for honesty. Some ideas felt too simplistic, others too ambitious. Yet, she sensed the urge to focus on something much deeper. Her role was to unearth truths, not just for them, but to confront her own understanding of connection. With every word she wrote, the realization dawned she needed to embrace the vulnerability herself, to set an example. The clock ticked steadily, marking the passage of time as she contemplated the conflicting emotions that lay ahead. What if she, too, found herself in the crossfire of raw emotions? To stand before them as a beacon of comfort, knowing that she might have to expose her own scars. The walls around her started collapsing inward in that moment, and she could feel the tightening grip of fear. Grabbing her phone, she sent a voice message to David, explaining her thoughts on promoting honesty and vulnerability. Each syllable echoed her professional ethos, but underlying it all was a fragile thread of personal revelation. What would they all learn about her as much as she revealed about them? The hesitation flooded in, strong and unyielding. Were her fears a reflection of her own unresolved past? The thought lingered, unsettling. She had worked hard to distance herself from her own history. Was she now destined to relive it through her patience? Still, if she could navigate their emotional complexities, perhaps she could face her own. Just as those thoughts settled, a notification from David's message chirped back, "You're right. I think we should all be open about our flaws. I trust you." It felt like a lifeline thrown amidst a storm. Those words dissolved some of the tension in her chest, replacing it instead with renewed determination. Taking a deep breath, Amber reclined on her familiar couch, moments before a pivotal shift awaited her. A cocktail of excitement and trepidation thrummed through her veins. She recalled a quote she once heard: "What you resist, persists." The realization washed over her. If she wanted to guide David and Henry through their difficulties, she needed to face hers directly. With that clarity in mind, she set her notepad down, the ink barely dry, but a different thought danced at the edges of her consciousness. Was she ready to unravel the mysteries of her heart? Yet a deeper concern nagged at her. A complexity simmered beneath the surface, a facet of her past she had been less willing to confront. What if pushing them to bare their souls uncovered more than she anticipated for herself? Would the emotional landscape of the evening provide a safe haven, or unleash chaos in her own life? Tomorrow loomed, a date with decision and truth, where every word shared could reshape their paths irrevocably. How would they navigate the terrain of their fragile bonds? Amidst the very real potential for pain? As Amber finally closed her eyes, surrendering to a restless sleep, she felt the unyielding question pulsing in her mind: what hidden truths would come to light not just for David and Henry, but for herself. The morning light broke through the curtains, filtering in shades of gold and warmth, but for Amber, it felt more like a spotlight casting her imperfections into stark relief. She lingered in bed, conscious of the clock ticking relentlessly toward the meeting that could alter everything. The anticipation twisted within her, a tumultuous storm of doubt and excitement. Would she be able to navigate the delicate terrain of emotion, or would she fracture under its weight? After a quick shower, the steam wrapped around her like a comforting blanket, but as she dressed, a sense of unease replaced it. With every article of clothing she put on, she felt a growing detachment from her outward appearance. The woman behind the attire still felt stifled by her insecurities. What was a mere blouse and skirt when her insides thrashed like chaos? In the kitchen, the aroma of coffee filled the air, a familiar ritual grounding her before the upheaval of the day. Yet, as she sipped her steaming cup, she couldn't shake the feeling that every breath brought her closer to a reckoning she had been both anticipating and dreading. She found herself at the dining room table, leafing through her notes. The outlines of potential discussions were scattered throughout the pages like wisps of her fragmented thoughts. "Admit flaws," she repeated softly, anchoring herself to the mantra, hoping it would provide the strength she needed. But deep inside, the internal voice countered, "What if your own flaws are too much to bear?" The dissonance only heightened her resolve to break free from the bondage of that fear. As she set the table, every fork, plate, and glass symbolized an invitation into vulnerability, not just for David and Henry, but intrinsically for herself. Would they perceive her as a guide, or a flawed leader? That realization became a critical spot of tension tugging incessantly at her, but she clung to her responsibility to foster connection, to create space for truths without pretense. Amber's phone buzzed, vibrating against the table like a pulse. David's message read, "Ready?" She felt a momentary flutter in her chest as her fingers hovered above the screen. Much depended on this dinner, this connection, and she wanted to respond with confidence. But beneath that hadn't he changed the unresolved ecstasies and agonies that swirled around her past haunted her thoughts. With a deep inhale, she texted back simply, "As ready as I'll ever be." The cycle of self-doubt and determination resonated loudly in that simple phrase. Both were parts of her identity she could no longer ignore, as entwined with her experience as her vocation itself. When the doorbell chimed through the hallway, Amber's heart raced. The moment had arrived. She opened the door to find David's warm smile juxtaposed with Henry's apprehensive expression. It was as if fate itself had crafted the scene, a dynamic of hope captured in their expressions, but layered with unspoken anxieties that hung palpably in the air. "Hey, you," David cheerfully greeted, stepping into the house, but Amber could feel Henry's hesitation trailing behind him like a shadow. The warmth of the moment contrasted sharply with her internal chaos, stirring her determination anew. Opening the doorway was symbolic. She was unlocking a part of herself as much as inviting them into her space. "Let us sit. I made our favorite," she encouraged, guiding them to the table. Conversations waited on the cusp of the dining space as if they, too, were braced for the plunge. As they settled in, Amber recognized an undeniable truth: this gathering was not solely for David and Henry's disclosure, but her own illumination, a reckoning that would contend with the walls she had built around herself. Their eyes on her felt like mirrors reflecting her own petrified fears, magnifying what she too had avoided confronting for far too long. With a heart thrumming in anticipation, Amber summoned the strength she had prepared for this moment, both as a therapist and a woman on the cusp of her own truth. The air thickened with potential, heavy with the personalities and histories that were converging. "Let us talk about where we stand," she began, her voice steady. The time had come to plunge into vulnerability, to pave the way for honesty and healing. But she felt the pull of her own truth lurking just below the surface. The uncharted emotional depths awaited exploration, and uncertainty churned. Would she emerge renewed or irrevocably altered? And as the conversation swirled, the question hung in the air: what would each of them discover within the labyrinth of shared vulnerabilities, and would Amber finally uncover the truth she was hiding even from herself? Amber's breath caught in her throat as she looked around the dinner table. The three of them were no longer just a nurse, a son, and a father, they were souls woven together by a shared longing for understanding. This was a unique juncture, one where the weight of their past could either shackle them or serve as the catalyst for metamorphosis. As she observed David's eager expression and Henry's guarded demeanor, Amber felt her resolve strengthen. "Let us start with honesty," she proposed, her voice cutting through the thick tension. "We owe it to ourselves to embrace vulnerability tonight." Both men locked eyes on her, the gravity of her words hanging in the air. The oral silence seemed to indicate that they were on the cusp of something monumental. "David," Amber began, turning the spotlight on him, "what is your truth?" He looked contemplative, the edges of his mouth tightening, as if summoning the courage to navigate the emotional depths he'd been avoiding. "I lost sight of who I was in my pursuit of success," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I thought each milestone would bring me closer to my ideal self. All the while, I was pushing away the people who mattered most. I regret that deeply." Henry shifted in his seat, a flicker of recognition sparking in his eyes, a glimpse of the man he used to know before ambition clouded their lives. "Henry, what do you feel?" Amber prompted gently. With a heavy sigh, Henry's facade cracked, vulnerability seeping through. "I feel abandoned," he whispered, each word an echo of a lifetime of hurt. "You ran away for your empire, and I was left to bear the weight of your choices." The admission hung palpably in the air, its truth tangible. Amber sensed the bond tightening, recognition brewing between them. "All I want," Henry continued, "is to feel valued, to know I mattered." In that moment, Amber felt her own heart swell. Their stories intertwined like woven threads, hurt energy spilling onto the table in an amalgamation of shared pain. She couldn't help but reflect on her own journey, her struggle to discern ambition from compassion and her own worth from her work. Perhaps tonight, as they dismantled their walls, she could also confront her homegrown insecurities. "Guys," Amber interjected, "this is our chance to redefine not just your relationship, but my relationship with myself too. I also worry that my dedication to my career might overshadow the connections that matter most." Silence suffused the space again, this time heavy with camaraderie rather than tension. David's eyes glimmered with newfound insight, and Henry's brows knitted together thoughtfully as if the weight of Amber's admission had shifted their perspectives. "I didn't realize you, too, felt divided by ambition," David said softly, his tone deepening with understanding. "We each carry our burdens." "Yes," Amber nodded, breath escaping in a rush as more emotions collided inside her. "I've spent so much time chasing accolades, worried others would judge me for not achieving enough. But tonight has reminded me connection is what matters. Maybe this isn't just about mending our relationship, but about allowing ourselves to be whole together." David's voice quivered with resolution, a promise bubbling beneath the surface that illuminated the path ahead. Henry's eyes connected with Amber's, and for the first time, she felt the walls he'd erected begin to crumble. "Then let us be honest," he proposed, determination shimmering in his voice. "Let us challenge ourselves. Build our family anew based on transparency and commitment." Their collective agreement felt electric, each heart poised on the precipice, ready to leap. Amber's spirit soared, perhaps each of them held the key to their recovery, knitted together by the shared desire for healing. "Let us draft a plan," she suggested, the excitement spiraling with the intensity of their pledge. "Not just for tonight, but moving forward. We can create actionable steps to honor our promises to each other." David and Henry exchanged glances. This was no longer igniting old wounds, but placing a foundation where hope could flourish. They began brainstorming. Weekly dinners became a pact, followed by open dialogues about their dreams and vulnerabilities. It was a fresh approach towards building connection, not simply through words but through actions signifying their commitment. Hours drifted by as they fleshed out the details, laughter punctuating their attempts to disarm the past's grip, a startling twist as they began uncovering shared memories and moments of joy amidst the sorrow. Amber felt the heart of the table, a warmth enveloping her soul, illuminating the emotional terrain they traversed. As the sky darkened outside, a softness settled over the room. Each participant at that table had brought not only their fears but their dreams to bear. The weight of their truths shimmered, merging into a tapestry of possibility. Driving deeper into the evening, Amber's personal growth crystallized in the realizations. A potent dynamic between her nurturing ambition and sincere connections bloomed. Here, amidst their raw discussions, she unveiled the beauty of vulnerability and authenticity, illuminating the deeper currents beneath her aspirations. When dinner finally waned, they pushed the plates aside, leaning back in their chairs. "I never thought we'd arrive here," David shared, glancing between them with glistening gratitude. "Thank you both. I feel lighter." "Me too," Henry agreed, his voice rich with reflection. "We've barely scratched the surface, but I can feel the potential here." And Amber suddenly realized the truth she had sought all along. They had just begun an unfolding chapter 1 where personal aspirations melded harmoniously with authentic connection. As the evening came to a close, she felt a mingling of pride and profound peace, confidence blooming within her, as the weight of her own insecurities shifted into mattering for something much bigger than personal ambition alone. Amber had indeed conquered a part of herself that evening, embodying the very essence of connection and growth. Reassured in her professional and personal identity, she stood more firmly than ever at the intersection of compassion and ambition. "Let us continue this journey," she urged softly, her eyes meeting theirs. Together. Their shared future now sparkled beneath the soft glow of hope, and in this newfound space, Amber understood their stories had woven together, creating not just a bond but a legacy of courage, honesty, and love. Join Amber and share in her journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that promise to inspire. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It helps reach more people who need to hear these impactful narratives. Comment about your reactions and theories because your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to inspire others on their paths to change.